Hello again, our most valued student. My name is Confident and welcome to Egurulen Tech's 24-minute lesson. This is lesson 10 in Supervision in Industry, and in this lesson, the student will be able to, number one, to list the patterns of communication. Number two, to understand or list the obstacles that a student can meet in communication. Number three, to understand the communication process. And lastly, to define rumors as well as the grapevine and the advantages of a grapevine. Let us look by looking at the patterns of communication. The first pattern that we're going to look at is called the wheel of peers. What do we mean by the wheel of peers? We are saying several subordinates equal in rank report to the superior, but they do not interact themselves. Let me try to elaborate on this part. As you can see, one of the subordinates here is A. You have got another subordinate B, a subordinate C, and a subordinate D. They all report to one person who is E. However, themselves, they do not communicate. For example, you can have a company whereby it has got headquarters, let's say, in one big city, and then there are different areas where the company is having branches. So you can have a company having a branch a branch B here. You can have a company having a branch C. You can think of any company. It can be whether Truett, it can be Edgar's, which has got a lot of branches. So this will be branch A, this will be branch D, and so forth. Now the headquarters of this company can be in JHB in Johannesburg, but you'll be having small branches. It can be in Cape Town, it can be in Durban, it can be in any other place. Now, the manager who is in Durban and the manager who is in Cape Town, these are small managers, they do not interact themselves, but they report to their boss who will be situated in Johannesburg. So, what we call this, we call it a wheel of peers. Again, it is a type of communication whereby several subordinates equal in rank report to one person who's the superior, but they do not interact themselves. The next type of communication is called the chain network pattern. What happens in a chain network pattern? This one you are familiar with. The lowest person here is the person who's lower in rank, and the highest person is the person who's higher in rank. It can be the superior here or the supervisor. And the lowest person can be a general worker. Now, when we're talking about a chain network communication, we're saying communication occurs downwards. As you can see, it's downwards from the superior person, which is the senior level, to the junior person, which can be a general worker. Now, when it is going upwards, we call report back. In other ways, they are reporting to the instruction that they've been given by the superior. So we call that a chain network. Now, similar to a chain network is what we call a Y network. It has the similar appearance of a chain network, as you can see from A, B, C, and D, but there is an external person here. This external person is called an advisor. So we are saying it consists of a number of members who communicate along a chain, with one member outside the chain often acting as an advisor to the chain. So what we mean by an advisor, it can be a lawyer acting to advise different people in the company. It can be a consultant, let's say an engineer, who is advising different people in the company. So these people, usually they don't report to anyone but themselves are advising any member along the chain. It is called a Y network. As you can see, it takes the shape of a Y. As you can see, it's like the shape of a Y. Then the person outside there is advising the chain. Moving on, the next one is called the circle of peers. This one, as you can see, it's also forming kind of a circle. That's why it's called the circle of peers. What happens in this case is employees interact with one adjacent member, but no further. So now, for example, let us focus on B. Now, B can interact either with C, or you can interact either with E and no further. The same way, E can interact either with B or either with A. As you can see, each member can only interact with 2 people and no more. That is called a circle of peers. Now, moving on to the next part, let us look at the obstacles in communication. What is an obstacle? An obstacle can be said to be a barrier that you can face when you're trying to communicate. So there are 9 obstacles that you need to understand that you can face when trying to communicate. What is the first obstacle that we're going to look at? The first obstacle that we're going to look at is called poor reception. Now let us define what we mean by poor reception. By poor reception, we're saying often occurs when a supervisor gives an order that an employee has not been conditioned to expect. So when you're a supervisor and you give your subordinate an instruction that they are not used to, that is called poor reception. They are not conditioned to expect that kind of an instruction from you. For example, you can ask your lower level subordinate to go and represent you in a higher level management meeting. They are not conditioned or they are not used to be given such a responsibility. So that's what we mean by saying there is poor reception. Let us move on to look at interference as another obstacle in communication. By interference, we're talking of different barriers that can affect your message to be heard. It can be noise, like an extreme noise, it can be a noise maybe from a radio, it can be a noise maybe from people working in a construction and you're trying to communicate next door, and the sound from the moving vehicles, moving machinery are disturbing you. That is noise. Sometimes it can be noise from maybe people who are just making general noise and you're trying to communicate but your message is not being heard. So that is called interference. The next obstacle is being tuned in the wrong channel. What does it mean? It means employees can be tuned in the wrong channel if a supervisor talks to him about something when the employee has something different in mind. So sometimes as a supervisor, you might give an instruction only to discover that already the employee had something in mind and they carry out the instruction which is in their mind, not what you are instructing them to do. So that's what we mean by being tuned in the wrong channel. Another obstacle that you can face is differences in culture. As you know, we've got different languages in South Africa, so sometimes some words can confuse in one language. Some words meaning something in one language can mean something totally different in another language. So whenever you are communicating, you have to also take culture into consideration. In one culture, a certain gesture can mean friendliness or can mean a certain emotion, but in another culture it can mean something that is not good. So differences in culture can play a major role when communicating. I think you have always heard that when you're traveling to another country, you need to learn their basic culture. Why? Because it can be possible that what you take as a friendly gesture in your country can actually be offensive in another country. So hence differences in culture can totally affect or act as an obstacle in communication. The next obstacle is level of education. As you know, people have got different levels of education. Now, you can expect that a higher level manager can have maybe a degree or a master's. Now, he's trying to communicate with a general worker who has the highest qualification, maybe a grade 10. So now, whenever such a higher level person is communicating to a general worker, he cannot use his expertise or his level of education to try to reach out to the lower person. Instead, he must go to the lower person and communicate at their level. Another example is, pretend you are going to address a certain group of adults. Now, this group of adults are only having a general type of education, and you are yourself, maybe let's say you are a human resource person and you want to tell them their rights. Now, the level of language or the type of presentation that you're going to make must actually suit your audience. In other ways, here they are saying you must take your audience into consideration. So whenever you are communicating, you might discover that the level of education amongst your group can affect or can act as an obstacle in your communication. Let us move on to look at another obstacle, which is selective listening. I think you have heard, especially when someone is communicating with you and you are switching in and you are switching out. For example, I can be communicating with you while you are using your phone. So in that case, you are selectively listening at the same time, concentrating on your phone. So what happens is, when I'm communicating with you, you can switch in, that is, you are now listening to me, and at the same time, while I'm still communicating, you can switch off or you can switch out. That switching in and switching out is called selective listening. You only listen to what you are interested in hearing. So this can be an obstacle in communication. Let us move on to look at the next obstacle, which is called emotional obstacles. As you always know, some people are more emotional than others. So whenever you're communicating with people, you need to understand their emotional levels. For example, one message to someone can literally mean nothing, but the same message given to someone can actually break them down. So you must also understand how sensitive certain individuals are from other individuals, so that when you are communicating, you must also put that into consideration. Otherwise, it can act as an obstacle when trying to communicate your message. The next obstacle is differences in interest. People has got different interests. Sometimes you might try to communicate something to a certain group of people who are not interested in your message. For example, pretend that you are a supervisor and you have been sent to communicate to a group of people who are about to demonstrate because of a low pay. Now, their only interest that you have to talk to them about is how are you going to increase their pay. Now, if you communicate something else, such as how they must increase their working hours and how they can actually become more dedicated to work, you are communicating something which is totally not in their interest. That can automatically act as an obstacle. Let us move on to look at the next obstacle. The next obstacle linked to the previous one is time when communicating. This is a very important thing to note, that time in communication is very important. For example, as I mentioned in the previous example, suppose you are asked to address a group of individuals who are about to strike. Now, the time when communicating must also be sensitive. You cannot tell these people to go and put in long hours. Or, for example, you communicate with employees when they are about to go to their lunch time and you want to give them an instruction to carry out a certain order. Now, the only thing that they are interested in at that time is their lunch time. So, time in communication also must be timed so that the message that you are trying to convey reaches everyone. Let us move on to look at the communication process. This is one of the important definitions that I want you to understand, because you can be asked such a definition in an exam. Let's look at the definition of a communication process. It is the giving, receiving of information as a result of thinking, doing, observing, talking, listening, writing, and reading. Again, it is the giving and receiving of information as a result of thinking, doing, observing, talking, listening, writing, and reading. That's what we mean by communication process. Let us look at the 7 components that are found in the communication process. The first component is called the communicator. So whenever you are communicating, you are called the communicator. What is the communicator? It is the person who delivers the message. So if you are sent to communicate a certain message to people, you are the communicator. Then remember, you are sent to communicate a certain message. There is what we call the message that you are carrying. That message must be understood. It's back again to those obstacles that you must avoid. So for it to be understood, make sure that the 9 obstacles that we talked about, you avoid them. The next component is the symbol. Now, how are you going to communicate? Is it going to be written, whereby you send out letters or memorandums? Is it going to be spoken, where you speak to people? Are you going to use pictures, graphs, diagrams, or the body language? This is the symbol that you're going to use to communicate. Then there is the media that you're going to use. The media, these are the ways in which the communication will be delivered. It can be the radio, the newspaper, the bulletin board, the notice board, anything that you're going to use to send out your message. Then we have the receiver or the listener. If, for example, while I'm talking to you right now, you are the receiver, you are the listener. That is the person to whom the message is addressed. Then there is the feedback. Feedback is the response to the message. In terms of questions, if you don't understand, that is feedback. Then we have the channel of communication. That is the direction in which the message is coming from. It can be from downward. That is downward means from superior to the junior level, upward from the junior level to the superior, or it can be horizontal, that is between people of the same rank or between peers. Moving on, let us look at the definition of rumors. This is the second definition that I will encourage you to know. What is a rumor? I think you already know, especially in the age that we are living. It is an age that is full of a lot of rumors, especially with social media being on the rise. Now, by rumor, we mean inaccurate, ambiguous, and or incomplete information circulated informally within an organization by means of an unorganized, often unreliable, but extremely persuasive and quick communication channel. That is what we mean by a rumor. As you go through this definition again, I will encourage you to master this definition. The next definition that I will encourage you to know is the definition of a grapevine. What is a grapevine? Grapevine is the distorted or information that leaks beforehand. It can be true, it can be false, or it can be exaggerated. Usually, management prefers or they like to use the grapevine. Now, let us move on to look deeper in the grapevine. Let us look at the 5 advantages of the grapevine in communication. As I said, most of the time the grapevine is used by management, hence you see that it has got some advantages. So let us look at the advantages of the grapevine. The first advantage is that it is used as a control check to ensure that information reaches everyone in undistorted form. The second advantage of a grapevine is that it is used as an informal means of supplementing formal channels of communication. Now, certain support nets have a reputation for always being in the know. Many are informal leaders of groups and are usually good workers. What they're trying to say here is that usually the management usually uses the grapevine to give information to these informal leaders. These informal leaders then are the ones who usually spread out the word as if it were rumors, but this case is not rumors, it is the grapevine. Then management are able to see or to note the reaction of a group of people, and they might know what steps they need to take in advance. So it is a useful tool that the management usually use. Another advantage of the grapevine is as a means of keeping up to date on events so that further information may be obtained from management and passed quickly before rumors can develop. So remember, a grapevine, there is a thin line between a grapevine and a rumor. So sometimes it can be mistaken to a rumor, but only to discover that it was a grapevine. Another advantage or another use of a grapevine is to encounter rumors. So if you want to stop rumors quickly, management can encounter them using a grapevine. Another advantage of a grapevine is that it is used as a means of locating malicious gossipers. Actually, management can trap you by sending out information to you in a secret form. Now, should they discover that information is leaked, they will be knowing now who is usually leaking information in the department. So usually it is used to locate who are the so-called people who cause trouble in an organization. Let us move on now to look at some typical exam questions that you will expect regarding the session we just had. Now, I will encourage you to go again through the lesson slowly, pause where you need to pause, rewind where you need to rewind, so that you can understand, especially when it comes to the definitions. Now, let us look at some typical exam questions that you will get concerning the previous lesson we just had. The first question says, briefly explain how each of the following could cause human face-to-face communication to derail. Let us analyze this question. It says, briefly explain, how each of the following could cause human face-to-face communication to derail. Now, what does the word derail mean? It means to have an obstacle. In other ways, to derail, like to derail a train, it means the train could not arrive at the expected time. It derailed, meaning it was out of time, or actually it delayed to arrive as specified or as expected. So in communication also, you can discover that communication can delay due to certain reasons. What do they give here? They are saying communication can derail due to poor reception, due to interference, and due to incorrect approach. If you look at this carefully, it is similar to the obstacles that they were talking about in communication. So instead of derail, the words that they wanted to capture here was obstacles. So now, it is very important for you, when they use different wording, you must be able to picture out in which section of the supervision here are they talking about. Now, poor reception, we did talk about poor reception. Interference, we did talk about interference. And incorrect approach, we're going to talk about it now. So let's start by the first one. Poor reception, we said often occurs when a supervisor gives an order that an employee has not been conditioned to expect. So that's what they mean if they say, briefly explain how each of the following could cause human face-to-face communication to derail. So what the answer that was expected is for you to say, often occurs when a supervisor gives an order that an employee has not been conditioned to expect. The next one is interference. By interference, we said interference can be noise or anything that can affect communication. So some of the notes that you can add under interference is that some other people can interfere, something distracts their attention. It can be an interference such as noise. It can distract their attention while you're talking to them. Or when extreme noise occurs, it can be an alarm, or it can be any noise that is extreme, or a machine that is producing uncomfortable noise. Now, what about incorrect approach? Incorrect approach in this case is used or is the same as being tuned in the wrong channel. Hence I say it is important for you to know how they interchange some of the words. So incorrect approach, you are supposed to remember that there is a section that talks about being tuned in the wrong channel. And the answer to give was the one for being tuned in the wrong channel. What does it mean? Employees can be tuned in the wrong channel or wrong approach if a supervisor talks to him about something when the employee has something else in mind. Let us look at the next question. It says, name 4 useful advantages of the grapevine in communication. There we see this question again now. On the grapevine, I will advise you, this is one of the most important questions that you can score marks to always master. The useful functions of the grapevine in the communication process. And we mentioned from these, you can again read all of the advantages that we talked about the grapevine. Now, these were typical exam questions that can help you to master the module on communication as we're looking at it. Now, we have come to the end of our lesson. As I said, I will encourage you to go slowly over the lesson, or to rewind or repeat the lesson so that you can be able to master those definitions that we're talking about. Thank you.